picture in front of us, and I forgot to press record. So again, as I said last term, everyone has the right not to be recorded. The camera's pointing at me and primarily only picking up my voice. If you have any objections to being recorded, please let me know. If one person objects, then we're not allowed to use the recording. Okay, so hopefully everyone is happy to be recorded. But if not, please do let me know. As I say, it's primarily recording me. I think we're all getting a bit tired of hearing that every week, so I've put it in the meeting invite, and I've said it this week. I won't keep saying it at length every week. So just to recap, before I remember to press record, I was just saying that there's two enrollment modes. There's a class for online and there's a class for in-person. Please check your enrollment. If you're enrolled in the wrong mode or you want to switch, please do so, as we have a waiting list of in-person for the in-person in the classroom, and we can't expand it due to the capacity of the classroom, but there's not capacity here today. And then I was saying a lot of the knowledge that we learned in hdat9600 Stats Foundations will build upon that, and we'll see some practical examples of why that we'd covered that in 9200. So why modeling, or what's modeling about? Well, modeling is, I would argue, the bedrock or the foundation of almost all data analytics. Okay. Whether you want to explain something, whether you want to try and predict something, or whether you want to establish a causal link, you can achieve all of those by some kind of statistical modeling. Okay. For people that like, I don't mean to cause any offense to anyone, but machine learning is a form of statistical modeling, okay, or an extension of statistical modeling in some instances. So it's the bedrock of all analytics, or a lot of analytics, I should say, not all. We will be building up week by week. There's three notional, sorry, I should introduce myself first. You all know me. We've all met before. I've been through the student list. We've all met. For anyone that's forgotten my name, I'm Andy, and if you want to contact me, please do so via Teams. Okay. We have a channel for public discussion, a class discussion, which I'll share in a moment. And if you've got a question in regards to the content course, please post there so everyone can benefit from the question and reply. If you want to message me personally on with a private matter, then please DM me through the Teams chat. Other than that, I'm not going to introduce myself again because you all know who I am. So the course is notionally structured into three parts. Okay, and I say notionally because we're not going to see section 1 and then we close that door and put it to bed, and then we go to section 2 and close that door and then go on to section 3. The three parts notionally are linear models, generalized linear models, and survival models. Okay, and the reason I'm saying notionally is because the things that we learn about model diagnostics, for instance, and model fitting, they will apply equally to generalized linear models as they will to linear models. Okay, so as we go through, we'll build week upon week to go through the whole modeling pipeline. There is 3 notional sections, but please don't look on those too heavily. Primarily, those sections are there because they align with the assignments, which I'll talk about in a moment. Okay. So we've got a 3-hour session each week, a workshop. And again, by the premise of the name, it's a workshop. It's not a 3-hour lecture. So I don't intend to talk for 3 hours. There will be, we will start with some talking each week from me, but it would be a mixture of me presenting some content, some material, and then we'll have a little tutorial, and then we'll have a team-based learning exercise, and I'll talk more about that. But for today, we've got a slightly different schedule because with week one, we haven't got any content under our belts yet. So we're going to skip the tutorial questions part of today's session. And we're going to do, the first part will be me talking about what's what in the course, what we need to know, where you can find content, where you find materials, where to ask questions. And then the second part will be the usual first part, if that makes sense. So then we'll go into a little mini lecture about the content of exploratory data analysis from me, which is where we'd normally start our weekly workshop. And then we'll as I said, we'll skip the tutorial this week, but this tutorial exercise, and we'll go straight to the team-based learning activity. So this week looks a little bit different, but generally it will be generally it will be a lecture from me, a mini tutorial exercises, a team activity. Okay, that will be the structure of the session each week. As I say, this week we're going to skip the tutorial. The lecture bit is going to come second, and I'm going to precede that with an introduction to the course, and the TBLA will still sit where it usually sits. We're scheduled for 3 hours. Please tell me when you're ready for a break. I know that we can't work for 3 hours. I know I can't concentrate and think for 3 hours straight without a break. So let me know. No, I'll try to schedule a break between each of the 3 sections. But if we're getting tired or we want a break, please let me know. The reason I'm saying that is because we've got plenty of time in the 3 hours. No matter what your official UNSW calendar might say, we're going to try and start as close to 2:05 as possible. So I think officially your calendars might say 2 o'clock. Okay. We don't get into the room until a few minutes before 2 o'clock. And then it takes me a few minutes to set up, especially when there's any technical issues. So we'll try and start as close to 2:05 as possible. That means we'll try and take a break about 3 o'clock, another around 4:45, and we'll try to finish around 20 to 5 each week so that we have time for any questions that anyone wants to ask. Okay, and if you're not interested in the questions, you're free to go. And if you want to ask questions, then there'll be plenty of time. As always, please, I encourage your questions. As you know, there's nothing more I like to do than talk and explain something. If you ask me a question, I'm more than happy to do my best to try and answer and explain. But if you don't ask, if you don't speak up, then I've no way of knowing what it is that you're questioning or thinking about or pondering or stuck on. So don't let this snowball roll and build up into a big, huge, massive, I don't know the analogy I'm going for, a big, massive snowball. As soon as you have a question, please ask. As I always say, I don't mean to do this in any way belittling, but I always like to ask a question as if I'm a 7-year-old, because if I've got a question, I want a simple question and I want a simple answer. Okay, so please don't sit there thinking, oh, I'm not quite got this, I just need to think about it. If you haven't got it, just ask me, and don't try and think, how do I make myself sound clever or the question sound clever? Just say, I've not got this. What is that you're saying? Why is that? Or can you say that again? Just please ask. Okay. And there's a question Tenzin online. So the slides aren't already up. I will share the slide deck in a moment. I should have put it up. There's no reason I couldn't have put it up beforehand. But no, the slide deck for this week isn't open yet, so it's just what I'm sharing on screen. But I will share the slide deck before the session for future weeks. It'll become clear why. But thanks for the question, Tenzin. So that's our general structure. As I say, I intend to be as flexible as you guys want to be. So if you want to spend longer, if you want more of me talking, you ask more questions, I'll spend longer talking. That first section will be elongated. If you don't ask any questions, then I'll get through my content rather quickly. And we'll move on into tutorials. If you want to spend more time practicing the tutorial questions, then we can spend more time practicing the tutorial questions. If you want to spend more time on the TBLA activity, we can do that. Okay. So I've given a little overview. I've given an introduction to me. I've given an introduction of how it builds upon what we've done previous. I've given a little encouragement for you to please ask questions. So what's in the course? Let's have a look at that. 4 learning outcomes, and these are the things that we should be able to tick off when we complete the course. So we should be able to construct generalized linear models with appropriate covariate sets in health research scenarios. Let's unpack that for a minute. So not only do we need to be able to fit the model, so we're going to be using R to do that. R is going to be our friend again. Appropriate covariate sets, there's going to be a decision-making process of how we develop our covariate set, or what observations we include in our model, or similarly, which observations we exclude from our model. And by observations, I mean in things like blood pressure, height, weight, gender, age. Okay. So that first one has 2 main parts to it: how to choose your covariate set, and then how to construct the model. Second learning outcome: appraise model fit using a variety of model diagnostics. I cannot emphasize enough that this is one of the most important steps in model fitting. You're going to hear me say this a lot throughout the term, but modeling is not just a science, it's an art form. There's part of it that is following an algorithm, the fitting part, but there's an art form part of how do you fit it. And part of that art form is looking at the diagnostics and saying, is the model adequate? Okay. So if your model diagnostics show that you've got an adequate model, then you're good to move on. If your model diagnostics do not show that you have an adequate model, then you need to investigate or go back to the drawing board. Too often, the reason I'm putting this right up front, too often people will go, okay, I fit the model. These are the answers I got from R. Let's now interpret. Okay. You all know that phrase. I'm sure you've heard it. Garbage in, garbage out. R will fit a model if you ask it to, in most instances, not always. But it doesn't mean that's a good model just because R has fit the model. If you've asked R to do something daft, R will give you a daft answer. Your diagnostics are where you say, okay, was that a good thing to do? Yes or no. If it's yes, I proceed with the next step of the model pipeline. If no, I go back to the previous step and investigate again. So second learning outcome, appraise model fit. Effectively, is it a decent enough model or not? Also, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So you're never going to obtain a perfect model, or very, 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 very rarely. And the key there is variety of model diagnostics. So when you at this stage, you're not going to be looking for a single value or a single parameter or a single statistic. Again, you're going to have a collection of tools in your toolbox, and you're going to have to think about a range of different things. Third learning outcome, compose narratives of generalized linear model interpretation within the framework of statistical inference. So this is where we actually come to make meaning. And I'll use the phrase meaning making. What does it actually mean? Okay, that's the number, that's the value, but what does it mean in real life? And again, putting it right up front, because I know that everyone likes to get to the end of the pipeline first. Saying what the number is and saying what the effect is not meaning making. The models we fit will be to real data sets and they'll have real interpretation. So the coefficient is 2. This means that twice the effect is not meaning making. The coefficient is 2, which means that males on average are twice the outcome value as females is meaning making. Context, context, context. And finally, the fourth learning outcome, visualize standard statistical techniques as special simplified cases of the generalized linear model. So I've already said modeling is the bedrock of analytics. Everything that you've looked at to date in 9200 is a special case of a linear model. So odds ratios are a special case of a logistic model. Relative risks are a special case of Poisson. What else have we done? Confidence intervals are it can be also derived from your linear models. T-tests, when we looked at hypothesis testing, T-tests are just a special case of a linear model where you've got a continuous exploratory covariate. Chi-squared is just a special case where you've got a categorical or a dichotomous, a binary explanatory covariate. So all of these things are just special cases of the generalized linear model. So the fourth learning outcome is to be able to understand that you don't need to do a t-test because you can just fit the linear model and you can determine from the linear model what the result of the t-test would be, for example. And again, for many people, this is at least the second course that you're taking with R. Some people have taken some other courses with R as well. But we're not going to forget all of those R skills we learned in hdat9600. We will be building on those. Again, all of the code that you require will be given in the notes. You are not expected to code anything that's not provided to you in the notes. Okay. As well as the notes that you'll be provided with for each chapter, we'll have plenty of opportunity to practice with the tutorial questions and the team activities. Any questions so far? So as a health data scientist, if you think about anything that you want to do or might envisage yourself doing, it really falls under one of these three umbrella terms. You want to describe the situation, you want to describe what's happening, you want to predict what's going to happen. So if you think about COVID-19, you want to describe what the caseload is today in a certain area or comparison across areas. You want to predict what the caseload might be in a week, month, year's time. And then the third umbrella is causal inference. So what's the cause of the submission of COVID-19? So that's why I'm claiming that this course of modeling forms the bedrock of analytics, because it's difficult to think of a task that you would want to do as a health data scientist that doesn't fall under one of these three broad umbrellas. And all of these could be tackled with modeling approach. We're going to look in modeling one primarily from a descriptive role. We will do some prediction, some examples where we're looking to predict as well. Causal inference will be a main topic of hdat9700 modeling 2. Okay, so we won't do too much on causal inference in this course, but when we go on to do hdat9700, that will be a major topic there. And similarly, Why I'm saying we'll do more description than prediction is because in 9500 machine learning, that will primarily focus, the main focus there will be on prediction. Okay, so that our gap, if you like, our niche area, unique point is in explaining description, number one. Okay. Hi, Mohammed. You have a question. Would you like to put your mic on and ask, please?
Hi, Andrew. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah, Andrew, I want to ask you because I am also I have seen the causal inference yesterday in the machine learning also.
Yeah.
And you know, at the last semester, we have taken the causal and how we can manage and assess related to the Bradford and Rothman.
Yeah.
What is the difference here between that causal and this one, causal inference? And what is the relation between the causal here, inference, and the prediction, especially with the machine learning? Is it something different? Because here there is I understand the descriptive for the data and the prediction, but here what is the role or what is the benefit? What we can learn about the causal inference?
Yeah. Great question. Did everyone hear the question? Yeah. Okay. So as I've already said, and this is a great example, what we did in H200 isn't being forgotten. We're building upon that. So what we looked at there, Bradford Hill's viewpoints, Rothman's causal pies, they're a very simple way, if you want to put it that way, or a first step in investigating causality. So with Rothman's, what we were saying is we were looking for arguments or criteria, if we like, of saying that this link could be causal. So we were looking to develop an argument. Okay? And with Rothman's, we were trying to put things into causes to say, this is what you need. And if you have this and it leads to the disease, that must be a causal pie. Okay. Mohammed's question goes on. So that's perfectly, that is causal inference. But it's a very first step. It's like a preliminary investigation, if you want to put it that way. Yeah. Mohammed's question then went on to say, what's the difference between prediction and causal inference? So prediction, and again, I'm speaking to this point generally to answer the question. So there is some instances where you might actually be interested, but generally speaking, in prediction, we are not bothered about the mechanism or the effect of the predictor variables. Okay, so when we are considering prediction, our goal is to get the model that best predicts the outcome. Okay, so when we're looking at the second one I put up there, prediction, the understanding or the meaning making, what the model means, isn't really that important. Okay, that's not our primary objective. We treat the model, and again, this is me speaking. So if anyone wants to disagree with my viewpoint, and again, I'm only speaking generally, in the prediction, we treat the model as a black box. We don't care what variables go in. We don't care what the predictor variables are. We don't care what coefficients and effects those variables have. The only thing that we're bothered about is getting that best prediction of the outcome. Okay, so we're not bothered about what the model means, solely what model is going to give me the best prediction of my observation. Whereas in causal inference, we might be looking for prediction, or we might be looking for explanation. But one of the thing that we are absolutely key about is that the effects in the model are actually causal to the outcome. So when we had we said that correlation is association. It doesn't mean that because X and Y are correlated, they're associated. It doesn't mean that X causes Y or Y causes X. Okay, so in our first explanation, we'd be quite happy if X was associated with our outcome Y, because we're saying in some way this is the relationship between X and Y. Okay, we're not saying that X causes Y, we're just saying that this is the relationship between them. Just as if we had a positive correlation, we'd say X is associated with Y. Okay, but in the third point, the causal link, what we are absolutely laser focused on is that X, the predictor variable or the explanation variable, whichever framework we're in, is causing our outcome Y. So again, one little simple question, and you can see how excited it gets me. So to recap, explanation is akin to looking for an association between our explanatory variables and our outcome. We're just trying to say, as our explanatory variable height increases, our outcome of weight also increases. We're not saying that an increase in height causes an increase in weight, just that an increase in height is associated with an increase in weight. That's explanation. Prediction, we're not bothered what the variables are, the prediction variables are. We just laser focus on getting the best prediction for each outcome, for our outcome variable, for each observation of our outcome. And the third one, causal, we're saying that we are bothered about our explanatory covariates or our predictor covariates. I'd use a different term there. I'll go back to that in a moment. But what we actually want to know, or what we're actually trying to show, is that our explanatory covariates cause our outcome. That's why there's three different situations. Okay, I will try and limit my terminology use, and if there's a term I use and I haven't used it before, please flag it if it doesn't make sense. But when we looked at likelihoods and when we looked at likelihoods and maximum likelihood, we talked about distributions being described by parameters. So I will talk about model parameters. I'll use that term. I will use covariates, and that is the observation. That's the actual construct we're measuring. So a covariate could be something like height or weight in the example I was just using. I'll use an explanatory variable, which is the same as a covariate. Explanatory covariate variable is just height predicting weight. So I'll try to limit to a few different terms, but if I accidentally use a term that we're not familiar with, please just flag it and ask me. But great question, Mohammed. Does that, hopefully that's give you enough of an insight?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Ahmed.
No worries, all good. Thanks for the question. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so I want to just talk for 5 minutes about our LMS, our learning management system for this course. We're going to be using Teams and only Teams, with the exception that we'll be running our Jupyter notebooks in Google Colab. Okay, so everything you'll need for this hdat9600 will be in Teams. I'm going to walk through where things will appear in Teams next. So you don't need to, if you've been to Moodle, you'll see that Moodle is effectively a link through to Teams. You won't find anything in Open Learning. If you just go and log into Teams, you'll see the team appear, and everything we'll need for this course will appear there. The only thing that we will do outside of Teams is the Jupyter notebooks, which will use Google Colab. Again, I believe everyone's familiar with Google Colab. If you aren't, please let me know. Happy to give you a quick demo of that. But I'll do that one-on-one because I don't want to waste everyone's time. And for Google Colab, again, for those people that haven't already, I would really recommend that you create a new Google account with your ZID as your username. Okay, so if you already have a Gmail, keep that separate, create a new Google account. And the reason I'm saying that is because in this course, there's the final assignment, which we'll get onto, is a team project, but throughout the course, there's an opportunity to work together in small groups. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's the easiest way to share your notebooks is for someone to create a link in Google Drive and then to share that link with the rest of the group or the rest of the team. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying you keep it separate. There's no chance that you accidentally share a link to your email or Gmail or whatever else. Okay, so let's jump in to Teams. So I really recommend using the desktop app. So again, free from Google Play or the Apple App Store. It's really gives you a better, nicer experience than trying to do it on your phone. If you put it on your phone as well, that's good for messaging, maybe. But I would really recommend, if you haven't got the app yet on your desktop, on your laptop. Hi, welcome. Then please think about downloading it. It gives you a better experience. Free with your UNSW account as well. So as I said, if you want to contact me directly, personally, privately, because it's not a general question for the class, but something specific, please just click on the chat and contact me through that way. If you send me an email, a few things might happen. The first is it probably will take me a lot longer to reply. Second is it could potentially get lost and not get responded to at all. Or third, that I forward that message from Outlook to Teams and reply in Teams. Okay. So again, there's no reason for this course other than Colab to go outside of the Teams environment. So more than happy for you to message me. I encourage you to message me, encourage you to post questions, but please do so within Teams. It keeps it all together in one place and you'll get a quicker response from me. On your calendar, depending on how you've set your Teams up, you'll have different apps down the left-hand side, but chat with me. You'll get for your assignments, you will get calendar notifications into your calendars automatically. And again, I'm going to talk about dates and assignments in a moment. But make sure you check your Microsoft calendar. You're going to get notifications in that. Okay. And please, I'm going to put the dates up and I will put them in the homepage as well. But please note that in your calendar, the date you get for the assignment due assumes you have applied for the 2-day short extension. Okay, I'm going to make that very clear. It's in the instructions of every assignment, but I'm making that clear now. Please, the 2-day short extension is included in the due date that will be pushed out in your Microsoft calendar. So look at the calendar, and if you see you've got an assignment due, please assume that that's the date that you have to apply for the short extension 2 days prior to get that. Okay. But again, the class list ever changes, which is why you didn't get the invites for today's session. It only came out this morning. Next week, I'll probably push it out on the Tuesday morning as well. But as we go throughout the term, I'll push the invites out earlier and earlier. Okay. But in the first week and two, the class list is changing so much that you might have seen that people online have already had two invites this morning. Every time the class list changes, I have to change the invite list, which pushes out a new notification. If I did that every time the class list changed, you'd get a 10 invites, 10 updates each week. So for the first couple of weeks, I won't push the invite out until Tuesday morning or Monday. But as we go throughout the course, the invites will get earlier and earlier. But it's always going to be Tuesday afternoon. So calendar for your assessments and invites and online people. As I say, your meeting invites and links will be there. And then assignments, you may have that tab if you want to get directed. But main one, if you go to Teams and we go to our team site, hdat9600ch2, you'll see that it looks like a normal Teams page. We've used Teams in hdat9200, but we're also going to be using it here to ask our questions. So you'll see that we have a chapter for a channel for chapter 1 EDA. Okay, so that is this week. Each week there'll be a new channel appearing. So as we go through week by week, a new chapter for each, a new channel for each chapter's content. If you have a question, or you want to discuss something, or you want to post something that you found that you think might be useful to share, please do that in this channel. Okay. Anyone can start a post. Just click on start a post. If you want to ask a question, but you want me to make sure that I see it in that post, say, daft question. Hi, all. I've forgot the convener's name, and you want me to can anyone help? By the way, trying to type when you know people are waiting for you to type is the worst thing in the world. It's the same as when someone's looking over your shoulder and you're trying to type, your typing skills disappear. Can anyone help? And then for some reason, you forgot my name, but you just remember, I can't tag myself, but you see, if you start typing my name and start typing my name, you'll get my tag come up and tag me, and that will notify me that you posted a question that not only do you want everyone to see, but you specifically want me to see it as well. So if it's just a general question, don't have to tag anyone, but if you want to make sure I see it, please tag me. Okay, and then just click on post. Obviously, I'm just going to trash that. The other channel is, so that there'll be a channel each week for each chapter. Please try and post your questions to the relevant chapter, just so that people kind of think, okay, I have a question on chapter 2 content. I've got a rough idea of where to go and look for it. There's the other channel that is there at the moment is the announcements channel. This will be where I push out any important notifications. So if you've got an assignment due and I think I need to, something's changed, I've noticed an error or something, this is where I'll push out information. You can't start a post in the announcements channel, but you can reply to a post that I make. Does that make sense? So basically the announcements is any important notifications that I need to push out to you guys and make sure everyone gets them will be to this channel. If you want to reply to my notification, you can do so. But for questions, we're using the weekly channels or the chapter channels. Yeah. Before I went into the group, into our team, I should have pointed out, is that, yeah, we're showing up on the screen. If up here you're seeing your initials, I know I've made this plea a million times, but please just take a photograph and put it up there. Click on it. Click on it. If you're on your phone, click on it. Turn your camera on to selfie. Press the button. That's as long as it takes. If you're on your desk, your laptop in front of you, click on it. Press on the camera. Use your laptop. I know you don't think that that's very helpful, but when there's one of me and 60 of you, and when I see a name, I kind of think, okay, but if I can see a face, I'm much more visual than names. Yes, I know most people after a term of hdat9600, but a face just helps me recognize. And if it helps me, it helps your classmates when you're discussing and asking questions. So back to our thing. So that's where we're going to ask questions. The homepage tab is where all of the stock standard. The homepage is where all of the stock standard information is going to go. So you've got the course outline, you've got your student support reach outs. As assignments become due, there will be a dynamic timetable that comes up here. Files that are posted and shared will be down here. And also I will post underneath here the assessment due times. Okay, release and due times. So if you've got a question about the course that's not content, but just general course related, the answer is probably on the homepage. And if it's not, then please ask. And I can, if you ask the question, then I can put the answer on the homepage for everyone. Okay. So that's the first tab. The second tab that we're going to be using, and this is where you're going to get your course content, your course files, if you want to put it that way, is the classwork tab. There'll be a tab each week. It will be released around 5 o'clock on a Friday, 5 p.m. on a Friday night. Sometimes it might be earlier. Sometimes it might be a little later. Please, if you are needing it by 5 o'clock on the dot, please let me know. Sometimes things happen, a function changes, an error is discovered, or something changes, and when I check it, I always check the notebooks before I put them up, check if there's any errors. If something's changed and I find an error, it might take me a little while to resolve it. So I say 5 o'clock Friday, but if you absolutely need it because, I don't know, you've only got Friday night to work on it, then please let me know and I'll send you it privately, but it might have an error in it. Okay. But generally speaking, by 5 o'clock Friday night, 6 o'clock Friday night, it will be up there. Chapter 1, you can see that we've got the files for today, with the exception of the slide deck, which I didn't share yet, which was an oversight of myself, but I'll add this to here. So this is where you get your files. So in hdat9600, where we had a folder that you just clicked on the download folder and you had to unzip it and everything, here, if you want to look what the TBLA is, we can just click on it and it'll open in. I can read it and scroll through. Similarly, if you wanted to eyeball the CSV file, so you have to download a CSV, sorry, but the Jupyter files we can download and then upload them to Colab. Everyone happy with where to find the course material?
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And okay, so I've talked about everything. The last thing to talk about is assessments. When each week there's a practice and I emphasize the word practice, set of short questions, multiple choice questions. Okay, they are just a checkpoint. I would expect and hope everyone to answer them. You will be able to answer the questions as many times as you wish. It will just be a form, a Microsoft Forms like what we saw previous. 5, 6 MCQs, multiple choice questions. They are to test your own understanding. As I say, zero weight. Don't count for anything other than if I see that, and you'll get the, as soon as you press submit, you'll be able to see how many you scored, and you'll get automatic feedback, and then you'll get the opportunity to answer the quiz as many times. So as I say, totally for your practice, not used for any other purpose than that, other than if I see that you haven't done exceptionally well for several weeks, or you aren't completing that, that's a cue for me to reach out to you and say, I've noticed you're not doing the check questions. Is everything okay? Is there any issues? Just so that we can see progress going forward. What I'm trying to stress is that don't treat them as anything big. Okay, they're there to help as a checkpoint to say, by the end of the chapter, I should be able to answer these 5 questions. If I can't, why did I get 1 or 2 wrong? Can I try it in the quiz again? And they're just a checkpoint. So those will be pushed out each week, as I say, with a 0 weighting, again through the assignments tab. Your assessed assignments will also be pushed out through the same mechanism. And I'm going to talk more about the dates and what the assessments are in a second. So your assignments tab will be where you get your weekly check questions, and your weighted scored course assessments. Yeah. Well, that's everything I wanted to talk about for now, I believe. So yeah, let's go back to our slide deck. So I've talked about several of these things already from this week. Content will be appearing in those coursework tabs, tab for each week. Things will be added to that tab throughout the week. So for example, solutions to exercises might be posted after the workshop, because it's kind of counterproductive to give you the solutions before actually attempting the exercises. So not everything will be there on Friday, but the things that you need, the pre-work, will be there on Friday, 5 o'clock, and then other things will appear at the appropriate time throughout the week. As I've said, workshops each Tuesday, 2:05, or as close as possible, officially to 4 to 5, but we'll try to finish a bit earlier to allow time for questions. Structure from next week will be key points with question and answers, tutorial exercises, and then TBLA discussion. I've put there that the TBLA team-based learning activities are optional. That part of the workshop will be for you to decide, and you'll get a survey, a very short survey from me to decide. We're going to do a practice one this afternoon. When you look at them, you see what it involves, you can decide whether you want to do that each week or whether you want to leave it. If you want to leave it, I won't be offended. If you're joining the tutorial synchronously, the workshop synchronously, and you don't want to do the TBLA, you can leave when we start the TBLA activity. But if you want to stay, I encourage you to do so. They're very useful, very helpful. Okay, but they are optional. If you don't want to do them, I won't be offended.
Okay, Andrew, that's mean TBLA It will be after the tutorial, after the workshop, every Tuesday.
No, so it will be part of the workshop. So
Okay.
we'll still finish by 5 o'clock. But if you don't want, for whatever reason, you say the TBLAs aren't for me, I don't want to do the team-based learning activities, then maybe you leave at 4 o'clock. Okay. So we'll do them as part of the workshop, but I'm not going to
It is
always
not mandatory to stay.
exactly.
Okay.
I always try to. You see, I've been talking for an hour already, and I've still got 2 slides to go before and we're already for before the
Yeah.
break. We're all ready for a break. I always try to be as succinct as possible with giving as much information. For the team-based learning activities, it is important that if you sign up for the team-based learning activities and you decide you want to do them, it is important that you are willing to commit to actually having a go at them. Okay? And that's why I'm saying they're not mandatory, because I would rather have 2 people that want to have a go at it. I'm not saying know what to do or get it right, but I'd rather have 2 people having a go at the activity and trying than trying to force 50, 60 people to do it. Okay. That's what I'm saying. It's your decision. If you find, we'll look at an example one today, a practice one today. If you find it useful, then sign up. If you don't want to sign up, it's your choice. Hopefully that explains the question. I think it was from Mohammed.
Yes, yes. It's clear. Just to explanation, just Andrew.
Thank you. So it's not extra. You get an early finish if you don't want to do it. And I should also say, for those people that can't, those online people, I should have said this, attendance, if you are enrolled in person mode, attendance at the workshop is expected for 2 hours. Okay, that's why I'm saying the 3rd hour, if you want to do the TBLA, great. If you don't, it's optional, it's not mandatory. Okay, but if you're in person mode, 2 hours workshop is attendance is expected. That's UNSW policy. If you are enrolled online mode, then attendance is encouraged, strongly encouraged, but is optional. So for those people watching the recording of this and thinking, I would like to partake and have a go at the team-based learning activities, but I can't be here each week, don't panic, don't worry. I've got a solution for you guys as well. So there's an asynchronous option to complete the TBLA as well. So these are your assessments. There's 3 individual assessments. And again, I alluded to the 3 notional parts of the course: linear models, generalized linear models, survival analysis. I said, don't hang on, box those too much. But generally speaking, they align with your assignments. First one is worth 20%. Second assignment, rather thinking about assignment 1, 20%, assignment 2, 25%, assignment 3, 25%. That's 70% for your individual assignments. And the final assignment is a team project, which is worth the final 30%. Okay. The first date given for each of those is the due date. So the first assignment 1 is due on the Friday, the 27th of June. If you apply for the 2-day short extension, and I encourage everyone to do that, you can apply for all 3 assignments now. Do it now, get it out of the way so you don't have to think about it later. Then the due date becomes Sunday, the 29th of June. The submission times for all submissions are 11:59 p.m. Okay, I've tried to make this as clear as possible. It's not midnight, because then people question, well, is it midnight on Friday or midnight Saturday or midnight Thursday? So if you submit it on the Sunday, at any time that's on Sunday, you have submitted before the due time. If you submit on the Monday or any time after Monday, it's past the due time. Okay, does that make sense? So it's saying Sunday 11:59, but it's really like Sunday midnight. You've got all of Sunday. So only the individual assignments 1, 2, and 3, have a 2-day extension. You'll notice that the final project, the team project, is due on a Sunday already. And that's because you'll be put into teams. Okay. Happy to take more questions on this slide, but before I do, the reason I'm saying those team-based learning activities are useful and are optional, and I'm not forcing anyone to do them, is because your final project is a team-based activity. Okay. And one of the things, it's only a short survey, but one of the things the survey will ask you is if you want to do the team-based learning activities each week, and if you're willing to commit to them. If you are and you wish to do that, it will ask you who you want to be in a team with, and if you want to be in a team with certain people. I encourage you. Some people like to work with their friends as a team, which is great. Everyone gets along nicely and everyone feels comfortable. I know it puts you outside your comfort zone a little bit, but I actually encourage you to work with people that perhaps aren't in your close circle of friends. That can be useful because you get a different perspective. But again, I'll leave the decision to you. So you'll have an option in the survey to say yes, no to the activity. And if yes, then I'd like to work in a group with these people, or I'd like to just be randomly allocated to a group. The in-person people will be allocated as much as possible to groups in person, so you can work together during the workshop. The online people will be assigned to groups as much as possible online, so you can work together. And the asynchronous online people will be assigned to groups who want to work asynchronously. Yep. Same activity each week, but that's how the groups will work. I've explained that. And those PBLA groups that you will be assigned from this week, or you'll assign yourself to this week, will be the same groups that you'll do the final project in. So not only are the activities useful to learn and practice the content, but they're also a real opportunity to get to know how to work as a team. Their primary intention is to give you a chance to practice your team working skills for that project. Again, your choice. I'm not mandating it, and I won't be offended if you don't want to do them. Any questions on assessment? I know there's. So assignments 1, 2, and 3 will be kind of like extended tutorial questions in their style. So you'll be given some data, you'll be asked to do some coding and some interpretation, some comments. Your final team project, you will be given a data set, a big data set with a lot of variables in it, a lot of observations, and your task is work as a team to go through the whole pipeline. Yeah. Any questions online? Okay, in which case I think I've only got 2 more slides before we take a break. As you, just a couple of expectations. As you know, I prefer it if you approach me and ask questions. I know not everyone likes to ask questions. I promise you, if you ask me a question and I think, oh my God, where's this question coming from? I don't think that way. I'm not going to hold it over you. Like, oh, Joe Bloggs asked that question. They must be stupid. I'm not. I see too many students to remember a daft question. And as I keep saying, there's no such thing as a daft question. Okay. So please ask questions. I'm fairly informal. If you want to ask a question or you want to talk through something, just contact me. Happy to set up either a small group or one-on-ones to answer questions. But all I do ask is we do that in a respectful environment. Okay. I don't think there's anything such thing as a daft question, so I won't be offended. I won't think you're daft for asking a question. And similarly, if someone asks a question, please do your best to answer it. But don't say, "Oh, that was a crap question. Why don't you know that?" You must be stupid if you don't know that, because until you see it, it's not obvious. I've talked before about those light bulb moments that once you've learned something, it's quite hard to understand what it was that you struggled with. So when you're learning differential calculus, I don't get it. But then once you know and understand calculus, you're like, what was it I struggled with? So please just encourage people to ask questions, but be respectful. That works both ways. And as I say, we're here on a Tuesday afternoon for the workshop, but I'm available during the week. As I already said, best way to get my attention is over Teams. If you contact me via Teams, I'll endeavour to answer within one working day. Quite often quicker than that. If I haven't responded within 24 hours within a working day, please send me a little nudge saying I sent you this question, you might have missed it. Because if I haven't got back within a working day for a content question, it's probably that it's got buried somewhere. Doesn't happen often in Teams, but it can still happen. And to return your assignments, you'll have noticed on the assignment time, we have 3 weeks between the first one, but then for the second and third assignments, we only have 2 weeks between. So it is quite a tight turnaround. But I will try and get your assignments back before you submit the next one, which is why I also encourage you to apply for the short extension, because without the short extension, it's less than 2 weeks. I'm happy for you to make any requests from me. And I'll try and endeavour to comply with any reasonable requests you make. So if you've got any requests, please let me know. But as a student, again, expect you to complete all requested material. I don't think the workload for this course is massive. I'm not going to say you can skip through it without any effort. But if you're getting, as you know, 150 hours work for the terms course is around 12 hours per week. If you're getting into double-digit number of hours for the content, then you're probably spending not necessarily spending a long time, but being quite diligent. So I think the workload's manageable. Don't forget, if you've got any reason why your assignments can't be submitted on time and you've got a case for special consideration, apply for an extension through the special consideration. It's all it's all handled centrally now. And finally, the link for the 2-day extension is there. Special consideration, short extension. Please go to the link. If you're online, you've got a laptop or a desktop in front of you. I can see everyone in the room has got it. If you're watching the recording, press pause now and do it. Apply for all 3, and it's job done. And my final slide before we take a break is just to say, I know we focused a lot on reflection in Stats Foundations. Don't dump that behind. As you go through the modeling pipeline, as we work through week to week, think, okay, what's my model? Why has that happened? Is it a good model? Is it a bad model? Evaluate whether the diagnostics fit. Analyze, can you make the model any better? What could you have done different to the model? Maybe you could have picked a better data set, or you could have excluded, or you could have made data, imputations for missing data. How could you improve it? So the reflection cycle, or the process of reflecting, I encourage you to continue. Not going to make you write it down each week, but please don't abandon the reflection. all the time. Ask yourself, what am I doing? Why is the model like this? Is it a good model? Can I improve it? If so, can I go back and how do I improve it? If not, and it's a good model, how do I make meaning of it? So that reflection all through the pipeline and the modeling framework. And with that, I'm done with my overview introduction to the course. Any questions, please shout out now. Okay, well, it's 3:19. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's take a pause and we'll meet back at 25 past. everyone. So we've given up in that first hour. Everyone online still hear me? Okay. While we so that first hour, our first section, provide an overview of the course. Hopefully everyone's got a little insight of to what modeling is trying to achieve, an idea of how the course is structured, what we're going to be doing each week, when things are due, etc., how to contact each other, talk to each other, etc., etc. Any questions, please ask. Tenzin, I'll upload a slide deck now. That's what I was just doing during the break. It takes me a moment. So yes, I'll get to that in a second. In this next section, I want to look at the content or the first topic, which is exploratory data analysis, or EDA. Now, when we do modeling, like anything, we would love just to be able to jump straight in and get on with it. It's like when we go to IKEA and we buy some furniture, we open the pack, we just want to put it together. No one reads the instructions, you just throw them away and get straight into building the chest of drawers or the bed or whatever it is. And it's like that with modeling, but we're not allowed to throw the instructions away. Okay, we have to look at the instructions first. And that's what our exploratory data analysis is. It's looking at the data to ask a series of questions to think about what our data contains, think about the quality of our data, think about the appropriateness, whether the data is fit for purpose, etc., etc. So as much as we'd like to delve straight in, jump straight into modeling, the first step in any modeling process, the first step in any modeling pipeline is data exploration. Examine the data. There's a few different terms for this, so I'm going to try and stick to EDA for explanatory data analysis. Some people might call it IDA, initial data analysis. Those are the two main ones. Some people might just call it exploratory analysis. Some people might just say data prep, etc. But it's got a lot of moving parts in it. But if you hear any terms like that, they're all talking about your consideration of the data, checking the data, seeing if it's fit for purpose, etc., before you start actually fitting models. So that's what we're going to do in this next section. I'm going to talk through a few questions and a few explanations of what the process of EDA should look like. But to get the ball rolling, I'm going to ask us to watch this video, or the first 6 minutes of this video. It is a TED Talk by Hans Rosling, who is the founder of Mind the Gap website. If anyone's seen Mind the Gap, then you'll know that it's a set of great. Mind the Gap is a reference to what the tannoy says at the London Underground, the London Tube, as the train's pulling in off the station. So that's where the name of the website comes from. But anyone that's familiar with Mind the Gap will know that they produce some Hans is now unfortunately passed, and his son and daughter run the website, but they produce some outstanding visualizations. Okay, so if you ever want to look at some good visualizations, Mind the Gap is a good place to go. But here Hans is talking in a TED Talk, and he uses some techniques. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to, before getting into the content and giving you some questions and some things to think about, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is watch the first 6 minutes of this presentation. And while you're watching it, think about what features, and again, features is one of those words that will be used by different people in different ways. So people that's doing 500 machine learning might have a different interpretation of the word features from what I'm meaning here. But see what techniques, see what methods or features Hans uses to tell his story. Okay, so everyone clear on what I want you to think about while you're watching this. Okay, and if I just take this down and bring it across. I was trying to get that to work. And when this starts playing online, if you can share the screen. Okay. Can everyone online see the screen? It looks like a big red explosion. Thank you. Please let me know if the sound doesn't. The sound should come through online, but please let me know if it doesn't. Is it louder through here?
Little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one: which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is China. And this is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family. And third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still two types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We stop the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there, but not Bangladesh. It's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world. Let me make a comparison directly between United States of America and Vietnam, 1964.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes. If you're in the room, you can chat with your neighbours. If you're online, chat among yourselves, or just jot down a few features that Hans used, that you think Hans used to help tell his story, to help make meaning of his statistics, his modelling. Okay. So please, if you're online, just raise your hand or put your mic on and shout out, share, or pop in the chat. If you're in the room, please just call out. What features do we think that Hans used to make meaning of his modelling? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things he did, thank you, was to show the trend across the time by using a moving dynamic picture. Great. That's one thing he did. That's one. Anything else? Yeah. So he started off by, yeah, great point. So he started off by correlating the survey that he did of the students to chimpanzees and then to the professors, the Karolinska professors. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but if I expand on that, on what you've just said there, what he's doing there is giving some contextualization, some basis of where the premise is starting. So he's trying to set up the point that what you're about to see might challenge your preconceived ideas. But he doesn't come out and alienate the audience by saying what you know, what you think you know is wrong. He comes out and sets the scene whereby, oh, look at these students. I asked them this, and they got less wrong, less correct than the chimpanzees would. Isn't that funny? And he makes humor out of it. Okay, but subconsciously or consciously, the audience are challenged. The thing here is preconceived misconceptions. Okay, so he's setting the scene, he's bringing the context, but he's doing it using humor. And I think that's what you were trying to make with that point. Absolutely great point. So that's another feature that he uses. Any more features? Anyone online like to venture? Yep. Yep. So if you think about the amount of information that's presented on that 2D surface, so for the comment was the color and the size of the bubble to represent the population and the location or the continent of the country. So it's just putting a lot of information on that page, on that screen, that is forever changing, but it's done in a way that's simplified and makes it easy to follow. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I think the and again, not my paraphrasing of your point is that removing the complexity, not trying to make something look amazing, overly complicated for the sake of it, but trying to keep it as simple as possible to have the clarity of the message. I think that's a great point. Thank you. And again, I'm looking to the online people that haven't, but any other features? Yep. Yeah. So he doesn't drill down into the absolute details of, for example, talking about every country. He gives the message. He thinks, what is the story I want to tell? And he stays on point on that. Okay. And I think that's a great point also. And again, not wishing to paraphrase, but my take on that is that he uses what I'm doing now, talking, as another element to his presentation. And he chooses to talk and only attract your attention to the things that are moving in his message. So he's clearly talking and pointing with his hands. I want you to look here. This is where these ones are going. And he was telling you as they were moving. He wasn't just waiting for you to see where the picture went. At the end, if you saw the action replay, I know it was sped up, but could you imagine just seeing that for the first time without Hans talking over the top of it? Without his explanation, it would have been much less clear and much less clarity in the explanation. So I think that's a great point. What I'm trying to get out of this other than switch our minds on and wake us up a little bit, is when we're doing the EDA, what we're trying to tell is the story of the data. Okay. And there's lots of different things that you can use to do that. When you get real life data sets, they're going to be so huge, or whether that's in terms of the number of variables or the number of observations, that you are not going to be able to report everything. So just like Hans was selective in what he chose to report and the story he told you, when you're doing your EDA, you're going to have to at some point say, I've done as much as I can, and I'm going to report on what I find is useful in this. Similarly, when you're doing your EDA, you can use those visualizations. You can use things like different sizes, colors, dynamic objects to have a sense of time, movement, size, place, all of the things we said. So I think that that's a great example of what we're trying to achieve with our EDA. Okay. Just to clarify, we're not going to produce flashy presentations like that every time, but the features that he uses are the same features that we want to incorporate into ours. Clarity, simplify the message, give the context of where the data sits, where it originates from, how it fits our study requirements, our needs. What the data is saying, tell the story of the data. So all of this before we've even got into any modeling. So you can see that by the end of the EDA, we already know quite a lot about the data. We could go and model that data and see what effect time had, what effect geolocation had. But at the moment, Hans is really only presenting what he did in the EDA. Okay. So let me talk for, I'll try and get through these slides in 15 minutes. I probably won't, but I'll try and get through them as quick as possible. So keep that in mind when we go through. So let me give you now an overview of some of the questions that you might want to ask yourself to start producing exposure data analyses to kind of mimic our medical data. Never be tempted to fit a model and say, I'll just do it rough and dirty to start with, quick, fit the model, see if it's interesting, and then I'll go back and do the EDA, and then I'll do the diagnostics. Always be tempted to work through the pipeline, because if you miss these vital first steps out, you see a model, that model's that you haven't done the EDA, you haven't done the diagnostics, that model's going to influence your decision making. And if it's a good model, you're going to find out, you're going to try and pursue those early stages to make sure that that's a valid model. And if it's not a good model, you're going to think, I'm not really going to spend much time on this because the model I'm going to fit. But that model might be quite different when you do the correct EDA for the data set. Okay, so message of the first slide is that there's no excuse to skip your EDA. Data cleaning is only one part of it. So for those people who have done 9 to 100 data management, you'll have talked about data management plans, data cleaning plans. Data cleaning is only one aspect, so are things coded correctly, etc. How much missing data is there? But also understanding the data, getting a feel for the data. By the time you've collected you've finished your EDA, you should understand what your data is trying to say. You should have a feel for your data. You should be able to preempt what results your modeling is going to find. Even if you're working on a well-documented data set where someone else has done the EDA, the minimum in that instance, it is worth repeating the EDA that they've done. and reading through it and following through. That's because just because a data set is well used and well documented doesn't mean that the data dictionary matches up with the data set. Okay. And even if it does, and we're in that ideal situation where someone's done all of the groundwork, all of the legwork for us, and has done the EDA, as we said, for us to have a feeling for the data, we need to go through that process. So even if we use someone else's code, we still need to undertake that process. I think this is just saying the same. Data cleaning, as I already said, is just one step. Also in the EDA, you're asking, is it possible to answer my question with this data set? Because sometimes you find that you get a data set that you thought was going to be useful and it just doesn't contain the right information. For some reason, you had a data set that you wanted to compare different areas, and there was meant to be a town identifier, as in a region identifier. And when you get the data set, there's no such variable exists. So how can you do some analysis on location if there's no location variable in the data set? And I said, so the process of EDA, we're doing these visualizations, we're doing possibly linear transformations of things like we saw in 200, and we're looking to get a feel for our data. Going to go through three things, and then 6 questions or 6 hints and tips of how you might want to structure your EDA process. So the first step of EDA is that it informs data cleaning. For example, sometimes you'll get a data set where country will be recorded as Australia and sometimes as AUS, Oz. If you're going to do an analysis on that, you need to make sure it's consistent. Okay, and even if the data dictionary says that it's coded Oz, if you just believe the data dictionary and don't do your EDA, you're going to exclude all of those entries that have it as Australia. Also, in your data cleaning, you might find, for example, one thing in Australian data sets is Aboriginal status or remoteness. If the data set hasn't actually sampled many Aboriginal people or many remote areas, you might have very little data on that. So we have urban, remote, very remote, urban, rural, remote, very remote. And you might choose to combine urban, you've got lots of observations, rural, you've got lots of observations. You might choose to combine very remote and remote together because you've got very few. Second thing that you are gleaming from your EDA is thinking about your analytic decisions. As I've mentioned already, we had a data set where we wanted to look at location of clinics delivering a program. And when we actually looked with the data set, there was no reliable, consistent variable of clinic location, so we couldn't pursue that. You might look at your data analysis and say, well, I've got this variable and it's 20% missing, but I've got a variable that's very similar that has no missingness. So for example, a very simple example, you might have weight and height recorded as 2 variables in your data set, and then by your calculation of BMI might be missing 20% missingness. But you've got the data in your data set, but had you not explored it, you wouldn't know to take height and weight. You would have just taken the BMI variable as given. Again, more something that we'll look at in hdat9600 modeling 2. But if you do have missingness, you discover a lot of missingness, you might consider solution strategies to deal with that, such as multiple imputation. Third thing that our EDA does is it actually helps us to generate our hypotheses and to refine our research questions. So sticking with that example of location of clinics, we find that New South Wales was actually great at recording the location of the clinics, but Queensland and Victoria, they didn't bother so much. It was a bit iffy, and WA and the Northern Territory didn't record it at all. Okay, so given that's what we find from our EDA, we might abandon our question altogether, or we might just restructure it to focus solely on New South Wales. So in that way, it can help us design our research questions. The note on that slide is to say we have to be careful not to do p-hacking, which is just where we look for all of the statistically significant relationships we can find and just ask questions about those. That's totally wrong, a bad practice, not to be encouraged, to be very much discouraged, actively discouraged. But in terms of helping to define your questions and hypotheses, EDA can totally do that. To the point where on this point, we do EDA at the beginning of the pipeline. Very often when you get to the end of the pipeline, you're publishing your research or you're writing a report up or you're making your conclusions for whatever stakeholder, you might go back to your EDA and go, okay, if you're a university researcher, my grants just ran out, I need some more grant money to carry on paying my wage to fund my research. What hypothesis can I generate? So you actually use the data to generate your next hypothesis, which leads into your next grant application, which leads into your next round of research. So think of it as a cycle. I'm very much proposing EDA at the moment in today's context, in the context of today's session as something that happens at the beginning of the pipeline, but think of it also as a cycle where we generate questions about the data, we search for answers through visualizations, tables, graphs, models, and then we come back around from that, we revise our questions, and then we can go round and round and round. And if you look at any active researcher, you find that and you look at their research longitudinally and their research grants, you'll see that they follow this cycle because they use what they already know to develop and refine the next research question. Yeah. So it's a good personal trait to develop as well. So that's the 3 points of the cycle that we've just seen pictorially listed. In all of this, I've already said modeling is a science and an art form. There is no strict formal process that you have to undertake to do your EDA. The art part of it, the art form, is the decisions you make in choosing how you progress your EDA, which avenues you take it down, which avenues you don't take it down. Sometimes as you're doing EDA, you'll find areas that you didn't think they were interested in that suddenly become alive, and other areas that you thought might have been a hotbed of information suddenly become dead ends. So it's up to you to take your journey, just as Hans took us through that journey when he was telling us his story of how the population, family size have changed over time. So when you're doing your EDA, and this is now how, so we've talked about why it's useful to do EDA and the thought process of the cycle you're going through. So let's now think of some questions of how you formulate this art of the direction that you're going to take your EDA. There's two questions that will always be useful, and that's what variation occurs within each variable and what variation occurs between variables. Okay. Because if there's no variation in a variable, it's not going to be really helpful in discriminating between different people. As a health data scientist, I'm talking about people as being my unit. So I'm looking at variation between people. If I was if we were looking at microbiology or something, we might be looking at differences between cells or something on a macular level. But let's say a difference between people. If people don't vary on that observation, then there's going to be no discrimination on that variable between people. So it's not going to help us discriminate on the outcome. Okay. So within variables, we want to see variation. And the second part of that, variables that work in tune with each other, particularly if that is between the outcome variable and the explanatory or predictive variable. If there's a relationship and an association between them, then that's going to mean that as something happens to our explanatory variable, something is happening to our outcome variable. Okay. But also we want to know about how things associate with explanatory variables. Explanatory variables associate with each other, okay? Because if two things are very highly associated with each other, so have a very strong correlation, let's say, then the information between those two variables overlaps. So if you have two variables, let's just call them A and B for a moment, that were perfectly correlated, had a correlation coefficient of 1, the value of A tells you something about, or tells you the value of B with a linear transformation. Okay. So if we knew this, we wouldn't choose to put A and B as explanatory variables because A contains all of the information contained within B. Okay. So as we relax that a little bit from perfect correlation, a variable that contains 60–70% correlation is going to contain 60–70% of the information of the other variable. So we'll talk more as we move forward about a concept called parsimony, which is the simplest model possible that's adequate. But if you're including two variables into a model and 60 or 70% of the information of those variables is shared, then actually you're adding complexity to your model for very little additional information. Does that make sense? If two explanatory variables had no overlap, no association, then you could say they each contained 100% information, new information, you'd have 200% new information. If things correlate 70%, then 70% of the information is shared, you'd only have 130% new information because you'd have the 70% shared from both and the 30% from each of the other two. But you've still got two explanatory variables, but you've lost 70% of the information or new information. So that's why we looked at that in the EDA. And the key to asking good questions about your EDA is about asking lots of questions. So you don't need to write, you don't need to report everything. Your report doesn't need to be like, these are the 2,000 questions I asked myself. But asking yourself 2,000 questions might mean that you get 20 good high quality questions, which is what you would report. So 6 points now of things to consider. So that's the process. So now I'm going to go through the 6 points to think about as you work through this. First one is what variables are available to you. So what's actually in the data set you're working with and how are they measured? Very often you'll be given a code book or a data dictionary, which will give you some information on this. But does the data actually match the data dictionary or not? Sometimes it says variables are coded yes, no, and you'll find that the code actually coded 0, 1. Second thing to look at is, do the variables have missing data? The more missing data something has, then the more observations you're going to exclude from your model. And then you're thinking about things like your generalizability. If you're excluding 80% of your people, then how generalizable is your model to your population? Think about it as taking a sample, inferring it onto the population. If you have your sample observations and because of missing data, you're excluding 80%, how representative is that remaining of the population? Could be if the missing is completely at random, but if there's any informativeness to the missingness, then it becomes less and less representative. Similarly, in the missingness, is there a reason why? If you're looking at hospital admission data or let's say an emergency admission data, if someone's very seriously ill, it's highly unlikely that they've done or reported a consciousness test, for example, or more likely that they haven't reported a consciousness test and therefore it's missing. Okay, whereas someone's admitted and they've fainted, passed out, and they've come back around, they seem to be as not serious in immediate danger, then the staff are more likely to have administered that level of consciousness survey. So is there a reason why different groups in your data have different missingness? The different socioeconomic groups have different levels of reporting. So if you're thinking about something like cigarette smoking historically tends to be more prevalent in lower socioeconomic groups. People tend not to like truly reporting their cigarette smoking. So do they not report it because they don't want to report, yes, I'm a smoker, and because there's more smokers in low socioeconomic groups, for example, as an example, is that differential reporting bias? And then the third thing to look for are the data values sensible. So I've already said Australia and Oz are coded the same. Is it always male and female, or is it sometimes M and F? And is there any unusual outliers? Again, don't obsess in your EDA about outliers. We'll look in the model diagnostics of whether an outlier has a high influence. So when we're looking at outliers, we're kind of saying at the EDA stages, we're looking for values that are implausible. So if someone is dead and it's saying they've got a systolic blood pressure of 120, then there's something clearly amiss. Yep. So by outliers in the EDA, we're only looking to exclude those ones that are implausible values, impossible values. But if something looks to be extreme but plausible, we keep it, flag it, so that when we fit our model and look at our diagnostics, we say, does this person have a big influence on the model fit? If so, maybe that's the point we choose to exclude them. We don't exclude them in the EDA just because they're an extreme value. We'd only exclude them if it was an implausible, impossible value. That makes sense?
Andrew, just one.
Yes, please.
From the beginning at the EDA stage, about the exclude, like a person who is dead. Do we have to exclude it from the beginning at the EDA, or we have to like complete our model, then see if there is like impact on the model fit, then we decide?
So great question, thank you. The issue is if a value is extreme but plausible, that could be a valid observation. So that's why we wouldn't exclude it in the EDA stage. Because if that value doesn't cause us any problems in our model fitting, then it makes no difference whether they're there or not. And them being there has the advantage that the model is more generalizable because we're using a bigger data set. Yeah. With the impossible values, so that example, if someone's been recorded as dead and at the same time having a systolic blood pressure of 120, which observation do we believe? Do we believe that a person's dead and mark the systolic blood pressure as missing, or do we mark the systolic believe the systolic blood pressure and we believe the person's alive? We could go back to the data custodian and say, what do you know any more information about this? Can you go back to the original record? Is it an input error? What's the reason for this? But if we are not able to verify through an independent means and rectify that error, then clearly we don't know which piece of information in that example to trust, so we'd have to exclude it. Because the question would be, in that simple example I've just given, which one do we trust? The status of dead or alive, or the state, the measurement of the blood pressure. So only if the value is impossible or implausible would you exclude in the EDA. Otherwise, you'd flag it or tag it, if you want to put it that way, and make sure you be mindful of it when you come to fit your modeling further down the line. Thank you. Hopefully that's cleared that up. So then fourth thing to ask yourself is, how are the individual variables distributed, normally distributed, are they skewed if they're continuous? If the categorical variables, is there any categories that have very low numbers? If there's very low numbers, does it make sense to group them to get the small categories together? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. As a general rule of thumb, never be tempted to categorize a continuous measure. Okay. There is issues that we don't go into within this course where you choose to cut point a continuous measure. You have to be mindful of that. So it's just easier, I'm going to put it that way, it's just easier to keep a continuous variable continuous. Okay. The only exception to that would be where if that continuous measure has, let's say, almost everyone, let's say it's a blood count of HIV cells, and it was for most people it was a zero. Obviously it's a count, so it's a continuous measure, but for most people it's 0. And then for maybe people whose PrEP or treatments are failing, it's very high values, like thousands. Then you may categorize that to a dichotomous 0, non-zero. But if it's just a continuous variable that hasn't got those extremes of basically it's either all 0 or all at the high end of the scale, then usually don't even think about categorizing it, go with a continuous. And then point 5 to think about, bivariate relationships, so relationships between two. Think about correlation matrices, etc., etc. And I've already alluded to predictive explanatory variables that are highly correlated aren't actually giving you that much more new information, so may not be sensible to include in your model. But similarly, if they show a high association with the outcome, then maybe that's a good thing to include in your model as an explanatory covariate. But also, you have to be, notice I'm using covariate and variable interchangeably, but also you have to be mindful that maybe just because one of your explanatory covariates isn't correlated, doesn't have a high correlation with your outcome variable, it doesn't mean that there's no relationship between them. Maybe if you were to adjust for something else, a confounder, then maybe the relationship or an association between your explanatory covariate and the outcome becomes clear. Okay, so always effects can be masked by confounders. And then finally, are there any interesting or relevant multivariate relationships? And you can keep going with this. So in all EDA, you should do individual variables, pairwise variables, or bivariate. Whether you then go to 3-way, 4-way interactions or considerations is up to you. Again, it's an art form. You've got to drive and decide which route you take for your EDA yourself. So a couple of pathways that you might take. One example in your EDA might be to ask yourself, what type of variable is your outcome variable? Then to consider missing data. How much is missing? Is it too much? If it's too much, do you need to do something about it? If not, what do the distributions of each of your covariates look like? And then look for outliers. Again, only if there's extremes. If they're extremes, don't exclude them, just flag them. If they're implausible, impossible values, exclude them. And then think about things like if you're interested in questions like sex differences, well, maybe I need to do my EDA broken down by sex as well. Another example of questions that you might ask or carrying on, which might be which predictors in my data set are correlated, which predictors look like they're related to the outcome variables, some predictors more important confounders than others. And again, I've made the note there that literature reviews likely to require them, or likely be required. Your EDA is only part of what's driving you. Again, as a health data scientist, we'd be working with a subject matter expert that would be feeding us. No, Andy, we know that we're fairly confident that that is predictive of this outcome. We can't exclude that. We need to keep that included. Or the subject matter expert was saying, well, we don't know about that yet, but maybe it could work this way. So again, we need to be guided by that. And then if we decide, for example, we won't include height and weight because they're correlated with BMI, and we just decide to go with BMI. What does the distribution of BMI look like? What does the outcome, is it a linear increase? Oh, no, it's a U-shaped. And then what do we do with that? Do we categorize it? I suggest not. Go back to weight and height. And that's a very specific context thing. How does the outcome compare across our new groupings? And if you want a resource for helping you to actually conduct all of this in R and to produce some visualizations and graphs and things, there's a free online a book that's accessible for free, R for Data Science by Grimold and Wickham. Hadley Wickham is the same Hadley Wickham as the Tidyverse. But chapter 7 of that book, which is available at the link given there, is all about explanatory data analysis in R. So if you want some examples and some codes, that's what I'd recommend. So I said 15 minutes. I think I got more through it, more like 20. Do we have any questions? And I should have said before I started going through that section, I did make the slide deck available. It's now available in the resources. Any questions? Questions? Okay. Happy to take more questions, but we'll take a break. But before we do, when we come back, we're going to have a look at the practice TBLA, practice team-based learning activity. So online, please let me know in the comments if you have preference of who would like to work with. If there's no preference, I will just split you into 2 groups. And similarly, in the room, please, when we come back after the break, can you sit in groups of 4? So presuming the tables want to stay together, that would mean that one person from this table switch to the 3. But if you want to arrange yourself differently, please do so. But we'll take a 5-minute break. It's 20 past now, so let's meet back at 25 past 4. When we meet back, please, in the room, sit in groups of 4 around each table. And online, let me know during the break if there's specific individuals that you would like to be grouped with. Right, so let's take a break, 5 minutes, meet back at 25 past. All good. That seems as if we've everyone online still hear me. No. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So in the team, back in Teams, in the classwork tab for chapter 1, you will see there is a few files regarding practice TBLA. So the first one details what the activity is. So these activities always have a PowerPoint slide deck that looks something like this. You have to put your team answers on the slide. Okay. The activities are based on what are known as 4S activities. So the 4S's are a significant problem. You're actually given a substantial problem to solve. Everyone in the group is going to do the same problem. Everyone set the same task. The third S is a specific choice. You have to make a decision. And the fourth thing is we all report back at the same time. Okay. Even though it's a 4S activity and we've all got the same question and we're all making a specific decision, there's no right and wrong answer. And we can all make different decisions, which is why we reveal at the same time to see if, so we can compare and contrast. But we're in teams of 4 online. You'll be in teams of 4 in a second. I want you to, so this week's practice task is to work with the data set hdat9600 heart rate, CSV, by undertaking an EDA, so work through the pipeline, the process that we've just discussed for the last hour. And working through that, I want you to pick 3 main features of the data set. Okay, and again, what we define as a feature is up to you or your team, but each team should pick 3 features, 3 most important findings, interesting findings, if you want another way of phrasing it, from the data set, and pop them onto that blank slide, the second slide. Okay. Before you jump into the data set, you are told that this is the data dictionary, if you like. So in the data set, the identifier is the left-hand column and the description of the variable is in the right-hand column. Okay. So one of the things we've mentioned is about, does this actually match what's in the data set? Okay. The second thing is the heart rate CSV data set. So you'll need to download that and bring it to your Google Drive. And the third thing is, won't open. Is it open? Is your Jupyter notebook, which is just a starter notebook for you. So again, you'll need to download this and take it to Google Drive. But this is just a notebook for you to start the activity in. So this file and this file you'll need to download, upload to Google Drive to work on in Google Drive. The activity is to undertake an EDA of the data set, to pick out as a team the 3 features that you think are the most important. Everyone clear on the task? Any questions? Okay, I'm going to give you 20 minutes and then come back. We'll take questions. I'll share a few thoughts and then we'll finish just before 5. Okay. Okay, so the online people, I'm just going to pop you into breakout rooms now, so you'll disappear into groups of 4 to undertake the activity. For the people watching the recording, I'm going to stop the recording here as we're working in groups for the next 20 minutes. The session will conclude with summary discussion of the activity for the asynchronous online enrolled people watching the recording. There is a solution, an example outline solution provided in the coursework tab. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me during the week.